Hello everyone! This video is to test your knowledge of surface anatomy. Per usual, at the center of the note card is a definition that you will be given several seconds to determine the answer, and then I will give you the answer. This one is going to be a pretty easy, straightforward Quizlet. The term blank means of or pertaining to the hip. The answer is coxal. So your coxal bone is your hip bone. This term means pertaining to the cheek. The answer is buccal. You guys are probably familiar with the bone, right? In the buccal area is that zygomatic bone, which is your cheekbone. This term means pertaining to the thumb. The answer is the pollex. The pollex is pertaining to the thumb. This term means pertaining to the pelvis. The answer is the pelvic area, or the pelvic bone, sometimes also called the innominate bone. This term means pertaining to the head. The answer is cephalic. So cephalopods, right? Cephalopods are like your squid and your octopus, and they all have heads. And so that's what cephalic means. It just means head. The term blank means pertaining to the sacrum. The answer is the sacral area. Remember, your sacrum is those fusion of 5 vertebrae at the very inferior end of the lumbar vertebra, right? And at the very inferior side of the sacrum is the coccyx, which is the vestigial tail. This term means pertaining to the fingers. The answer is digital, or your digits, right? Sometimes we call our fingers our digits. So it is the digital area, or digital region. This term means pertaining to the ankle. The answer is the tarsal. Remember, your tarsal bones are in the area of your ankle. It goes your tarsal bones, which are short bones, and then your metatarsals and your phalanges. So your tarsals are in the area of your ankle. So that's the tarsal region. This term means pertaining to the arm. The answer is brachial. A lot of your brachial muscles are in the arm, so if you think about it that way, you'll always remember that the region of your arm is brachial. It's going to be sort of the lower region of the arm because your armpit is the axillary region. This term means pertaining to the groin. The answer is the inguinal region. And in case you are unfamiliar about the location of the groin, it is the junction between your abdomen and your inner thigh. So it's on either side of the pubic bone. This term means pertaining to the abdomen. The answer is easy. It's abdominal. Anything pertaining to the abdomen is the abdominal region. So when we talk about the abdominal cavity, right, that's pertaining to the abdomen. If we're talking about the abdominopelvic cavity, we're talking about the abdominal region and the pelvic region. This term means pertaining to the neck. The answer is cervical. Think about it. This is the location of your cervical vertebra, and so the neck is your cervical region. This term means pertaining to the eye socket. The answer is ocular. Think about ocular lenses, right? Seeing. So your eye. So ocular is pertaining to your eye socket. This term means pertaining to the armpit. The answer is axillary. So the axillary artery, for instance, is supplying blood to your armpit and just the upper portion of your arm. The brachial artery is supplying blood to the lower portions of your arm and to your hand. This term means pertaining to the thigh. The answer is femoral, right? Your thigh is basically the entirety of your upper leg, and that is where your femur is located, and thus the thigh region is your femoral region. This term means pertaining to the toes. The answer is digital. As with your fingers, right, your toes and your fingers are called phalanges. We also call them digits, so these are the digital regions. This term means pertaining to the buttocks. The answer is gluteal. So if you remember, right, in your buttocks, posteriorly, right, there's the gluteus maximus and the gluteus medius. And so these are in your gluteal region. This term means pertaining to the sternum. The answer is sternal. Right, so the sternal region is pertaining to your sternum, and your ribs, your true ribs in particular, have sternal segments and costal segments. The sternal segment is that segment of the rib that is attaching directly to the sternum. The costal segment is that part of the rib that is coming from the thoracic vertebra, that articulation with the thoracic vertebra posteriorly. This term means pertaining to the forehead. The answer is frontal, right? That's where your frontal bone is located. This term means pertaining to the anterior surface of the knee. The answer is patellar. Easiest way to memorize this is that your knee, right anteriorly is the patella. That is your knee, the patella. And so that is the patellar surface. This term means pertaining to the back of the body. The answer is dorsal, right? So in the case of a bipedal organism, right, dorsal and posterior are interchangeable, but if you want to be very particular, it is the back of your body that is the dorsal region. This term means pertaining to the foot. The answer is pedal. So pedal is pertaining to the foot. That is your pedal region where your tarsals are located, your metatarsals, and your toe phalanges. This term means pertaining to the cranium. This one's pretty easy. It is cranial, right? Cranial is pertaining to the cranium. And so we're thinking about bipedal organisms, and going towards the head is superior, right? You can also interchange that with cranial direction. So cranial means towards the cranium, or of or pertaining to the cranium. The term blank means pertaining to the anterior surface of the elbow. And so if you were to hold, right, your palms in the anterior facing direction, you will be having your elbows facing then the anterior direction, and that is your antecubital region. This term means pertaining to the lower back. The answer is lumbar. This is where your lumbar vertebra are located, and so that is your lumbar region. The term blank means pertaining to the hand. The answer is manual. We also call the hand the manus. This is where your carpals and your metacarpals and your finger phalanges are located. This term means pertaining to the back of the head. The back of the head, where that foramen magnum is located, is the occipital region. That is where the spinal cord meets the cranium. The term blank means pertaining to the palm. The answer is Palmar. Palmar means pertaining to the palm. Makes sense. This term means pertaining to the sole of the foot. The answer is plantar. Think of your foot as being planted on the ground, right? Sole is going to be what hits the ground first, so the sole of your foot is the plantar. This term means pertaining to the posterior surface of the knee, right? So the anterior surface is the patellar region. The posterior surface is the popliteal region. This term means pertaining to the pubis. The answer is the pubis region, or the pubic region, sometimes also called the pelvic girdle or the innominate bone. The term blank means pertaining to the posterior surface of the leg. The answer is sural. Sural is the posterior surface of the leg. This term means pertaining to the chest. The answer is thoracic, right? These are where your thoracic vertebrae are located on the posterior side of the body, and all the ribs are attaching to the thoracic vertebra and then anteriorly to the sternum. And so your thoracic region is your chest region. This term means pertaining to the spinal column. The answer is vertebral, right? The spinal column is made out of your cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral vertebra, and so that is your vertebral region. This term means pertaining to the chin. The answer is mental, right? Those are where the mental foramen are located. This term means pertaining to the nose. The answer is nasal, right? That's where your nasal cavity is located. I don't think I really have to go into it much more, but I also just want to point out that bone that separates your right and left nasal openings is the vomer. A lot of people don't know that and they tend to forget it, so that's the vomer. This term means pertaining to the mouth. The answer is oral. I don't think I have to explain that. Oral means pertaining to the mouth. This term means pertaining to the ear. The answer is otic. Your otic capsule, right, is in the ear, so otic is pertaining to the ear. This term means pertaining to the shoulder. That is your acromial region, right? The acromion comes off your scapula. That is your acromial region. This term means pertaining to the forearm. The forearm, right, ante just means before or forward, right? And so that forearm is your antebrachial region. I do want to note that if you were to take brachial and place an N between the A and the C, it wouldn't just be a misspelling, you would be completely wrong. Brachial has to do with the arm. Bronchial has to do with respiration, in particular gills, and a lot of fishes and even some amphibians. So if you put an N inside the word brachial between the A and the C, you are wrong. It's straight up wrong. And so things like brachial and bronchial, you want to make sure that you think about them correctly and spell them correctly on any type of exam. This term means pertaining to the wrist. The answer is your carpals, right? Your carpals are where your wrist is located. So that is your carpal region, right? Your ankle is your tarsal region. This term means pertaining to the metacarpals. The metacarpal region is pertaining to the metacarpals. That's pretty easy to distinguish, right? Metacarpal region, that's where your metacarpals are located. This term means pertaining to the great toe. The hallux. So your thumb is your pollex region. Your great toe is your hallux region. This term means pertaining to the metatarsals. The answer is the metatarsal region. Makes sense. Okay, so now we're going to ask you to list some terms. I'm going to give you some more time for this. I would suggest you actually take the time to list them out. So, list the 8 cephalic regions. The answer is cranial, frontal, ocular, otic, nasal, buccal, oral, and mental. All of these regions, these separate regions, make up your head. List the 6 upper limb regions. The answer is the acromial, the axillary, the brachial, the antecubital, the antebrachial, and the carpal. Those are your upper limb regions. List the 3 manual regions. If you remember, manual means hand. Your thumb is the pollex, and then you have the metacarpal region and the digital region. List the 5 lower limb regions. The answer is the coxal region, the femoral region, the patellar, crural, and tarsal. List the 4 pedal regions. The answer is the metatarsal, the digital, the hallux, and the plantar regions. Alright, so that is everything for surface anatomy. I realize it is a lot to memorize, but hopefully this helps you out.